Welcome, everyone, to hydraulics drainage profile creation for plans. I want to start by going to the East website to just remind you all how to get there. So I'm going to use Chrome. And if you are an internal or an external, so for internals, we can always go to our ODOT links and go to the external ODOT page. That's the easiest way to navigate to East if you don't have a shortcut. Under the programs, so there's a blue banner at the top, and I'm going to choose programs. And then what will appear under other programs is a link to engineering application support team. So that's probably the fastest way to find us. I want to focus on our topic for today by showing you the published information that I'm actually going to work from. It's on the East PDF list. New things that I have done on the East PDF list specifically for the hydraulics is I added to the deliverables section the hydraulics drainage profile creation link, and I added a drainage section with the idea that, well, we might have some more drainage specific things coming up in the future, and so that same document that we're going to use today is posted in the drainage section. So I'm going to open up that document, and we are going to use this document, and I will show you how I've set things up. There's information about why we are using an OPNP file. That stands for OpenX, Plans, and Profiles. Every discipline can have one of these files. The reason that we have it is this is the only method that Open Roads Designer and Open Site Designer, it's the only method that provides for a permanent graphics associated with your vertical design, your profiles. So that's why we're using the OPNP. Information about using an OPNP is in the basic training. So we're leveraging what we trained people on 4 or 5 years ago. We're leveraging that, and now we're showing you how to use, with this current version, how to use that OPNP file to get your profiles. I did want to point out one other thing before we get too far, is that I did add to the FAQs for MicroStation and OpenX, specifically for hydraulics. The very first 2 FAQs that you run across now, well, there's actually 3 that have to do with hydraulics, have to do with a reduction, what seems like a reduction in capability since we upgraded to version 2024. What happened is what we were able to do in 2023 put our geometry files at risk for corruption, and that was projecting a profile into the vertical, the 3D model of a file that wasn't actually open for editing. But we were actually able to do that. So it's a little crazy. And there was a high likelihood of corrupting the geometry. So that's the reason why that's no longer available in version 2024 of ORD. So just wanted you to know that that info is there. All right, for today, I've got a data set that I stole, borrowed, I don't know, and I exported it. And I exported that data set to my C drive. I have renamed all of the files to protect the innocent. So they all look like they belong to key number 59s. So we'll be investigating this together. All right, I've got all my files here. What I will be doing is I will be using this number 2 plan sheets folder, and I will be creating an OPNP file for hydraulics. I'll be creating a second one. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. I'm going to use Open Roads Designer to create a new DGN file. Let me zoom in on that so we can see it a little bit larger. I'm going to create a new DGN file. So let me just minimize that for a second, and I'm going to run Open Roads Designer. You cannot do this if you are using ProjectWise Explorer. When you are using ProjectWise Explorer, you need to use the new document command to create your new files from seed. So what I'm going to do is making sure I have my work set and workspace set correctly, I'm going to create a brand new file. I can only do this because I'm not working inside of ProjectWise. I've cleared my preferences, so none of my paths are remembered. I'm going to go into my number 1 design, into my number 2 plan sheets, and I'm going to create an OPNP file for hydraulics with a number 2. The OPNP files are all stored in the number 2 plan sheets folder, and that's by design and intent. It makes it much easier when you are assembling plans if you are attaching references that are in the same folder, so you won't have to navigate when you are attaching references. We're not going to get that far today. We're going to get to creating the OPNP file, but if you wanted to then attach anything that we generate today into like a PF or a PL file that's in the number 2 plan sheets, you won't have to navigate into the hydraulics folder to do this. It's right there in the number 2 plan sheets. All right, the first step says, working in the default model, attach your terrain from the 6 civil data, use live nesting depth of 1, and I'm going to do that. My preferences have been reset. So I'm actually going to show you the first thing that I do is I come down and I grab that vertical line of dots on my status bar and I drag it about halfway across the screen so I can read what I'm prompted to do. My references dialog is docked but unpinned at the bottom, and I'm going to choose attach reference. I'm going to go up into the number 6 civil data folder and choose that terrain. Make sure that you have your attachment method set to interactive. Once you do this, if you're working in ProjectWise, ProjectWise will remember that you want to use interactive methods, so you won't have to check it again. But if you find that you're attaching things and it doesn't allow you to select the nesting depth, for example, that's because your attachment method has not been set to interactive. With interactive, I get this dialog box. For the referenced attachment properties, I go down and I set the live nesting. I leave it set to depth of 1. You only need that first level. It attaches it. I'm going to fit my view. And there is my terrain. Now, the next step is to just going to verify. Select a terrain element and choose set the terrain as active, and then I'll verify that I've got all of my 3D managed models created. So with my element selection tool, I'm going to zoom into an area where I see a triangle or a contour. I'm just going to right click on that. A sort of hard right press brings up this pop-up menu. That's far easier. Set as active terrain model. That's what I want. I do that. Things flicker a little bit, and I'm going to drop down to the models dialog, and I see that my default 3D was created. I always check this, you guys. I have had it happen that the default 3D model didn't get created, and then later I'm like, what's going on? Why does that not always work? Well, sometimes I work with preferences that are a little old and maybe beleaguered, and things don't work right. I'm also going to check and make sure that that reference attachment was automatically made, and it was. That reference attachment to the default 3D was automatically made, so I double check that. Now, the next step is to attach my reference to my geometry container file, and then finish grade, terrain base, and then finally the DU model. So let's do that. I'm going to attach my reference to my container file for my geometry. I don't have a container file for the geometry. And I told you, I stole this data set. Okay, in the instances where there's no container file, if you were the Roadway designer yourself, you could navigate to the Roadway folder. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go up and I'm going to go into the Roadway folder, and I'm going to find the geometry for that L line and attach that. Interactive method is still set. So when I choose open here, I'm attaching to a pub file, not a container file. So I'm going to change that live nesting to no nesting. Do not nest if you are direct reference attaching to pub files. You don't want to get all of that, other working files that are attached to those. Now, I didn't see anything change here, but I'll show you what happens. If I bring the level display dialog to the top, the very top section of the level display dialog is actually your reference hierarchy, which is kind of handy. I can see that I've got my terrain attached, and I've got, I'm just going to turn off the display of the terrain, and you can see then there's that geometry. Maybe you guys saw it, but it was hard for me to see. The geometry is there. It's right down the center of the road. Okay. The other things that we were supposed to attach is we were supposed to attach out of the number 6 civil data, the terrain, finished grade terrain base. There's not one of those either. Okay, forget that. How about the DU file? Supposed to attach the DU file. That's going to be in the hydraulics folder. So I'm going to go back up, and in the hydraulics folder, I see there are 2 DU files, and you'll notice they say WRK. ODOT does not yet have pub files for drainage and utilities. So just FYI, don't expect to see them. You might want to talk to your hydraulics designer or your hydraulic engineer and find out which file they're using. Hopefully they have filled out their description right in ProjectWise so you can use that. I don't have those descriptions here, so I thought, oh, later, bigger is better, so I'm going to choose number 3 and attach it. Interactively is fine because then I get to choose, and it's no nesting. And I didn't see anything because I'm kind of zoomed in, and I don't know where this drainage is. So I'll just show you how you can more easily find out where your data is. You can zoom out so where you can see more of your project area. And then I'm going to actually use the references dialog, change my highlight mode to highlight, and then select the DU file. Now, when I look in the window, the view, I should see some cyan blue stuff, and I do. The cyan blue stuff that I'm seeing is down in this area, in the center. I'm going to zoom in, and oh, I'm seeing some like contours for like a retaining pond, and I can see some line work that, yeah, looks like it's cool. That's the reference. Now I know where I'm located, so I'm going to toggle that highlight mode back to boundaries, and I'm going to deselect the DU file so it just quits highlighting those graphics. So that's how you see where you're at. Now I've got a little bit too much information showing here for me, but let's see. If I look at the next steps, it says I am going to use a command in OpenRoads to create that 0 offset alignment that's parallel to the pipe network. And then I'll need to modify that thing. Okay. One thing that I don't need to be seeing right now is the terrain because it's just distracting. So I'm going to just toggle that off. Display, right click up in that hierarchy area and right click. So the display of the terrain is off. So now I can easily see where the L line is. I'm going to run that command that they said to run, OpenRoads modeling, geometry, horizontal group, offsets and tapers, single offset, entire element. It changes my tool settings window, and I highly recommend that you use this tool settings window. I'm going to check the box to apply the offset of 0. So 0 offset is what I want to create. I'm going to leave use spiral transitions. I'm going to set a feature definition. The feature definition is going to be set to an alignment, and I'm just going to choose CL main, and then I'm going to name this. Now, getting it to use the name is very tricky, but I'm going to type L _ 0 offset, and I'm going to hit the enter key on my keyboard. That's the key. Hit the enter key on the keyboard. Then I move my mouse off, and I see that I'm being prompted in the heads up prompt and in the lower left corner to locate the element. So I'm going to left click on that element. I need to accept the offset of 0, so a left click accepts the offset, and it cycles back around and it's ready to perform another offset. So I'm going to choose the element selection tool to get out of that command. And then just to verify that I actually have a geometry here written to this file, I'm going to toggle off the display of the other geometry. Just toggle it off. And I still see a line there. And when I select the line, I hover over it, I see that it tells me its name is L0 offset. So just toggling off that allowed me to easily select that element, but I can still select it. You could also turn off the level of the one coming from the reference file. All right, what's my next step? Got that. Oh, I need to modify. All right, here I'm actually going to need to select, and again, I need a little bit of information as well from that referenced geometry. I need to know the station that the referenced geometry begins at. So I'm going to use a command, and I'll show you that, to just get this information. This alignment runs kind of south, well, north-south. So it either begins at the north or it begins at the south. Typically they begin at the north, but I'm going to use the analyze point command, and it's on your quick access tools in the upper left corner, and it says analyze point. Yeah, you can find it on your home tab as well. Just so that I select the correct thing, I'm going to go to my active model, my active default model, and toggle off the geometry that I just created in my file. So I'm only seeing the geometry from the referenced file. Choose the analyze point. I'm prompted to select the element. I hover over it. It says complex L. Yep. I left click to accept it, and I see this dynamic positioning locate. I also can zoom in, and this version will allow you to actually place text or copy this stuff to the clipboard. I can place it here. Let me place it off here. Right click to reset. And I see that that station, if I can read upside down, is 819 plus 60.02. Okay, now what I'm to do is I'm going to toggle back on the geometry that I want to work with, and I'm going to toggle off the referenced geometry so that this geometry that I'm hovering over says, oh, I'm complex element L0 offset. And I'm going to use the command off the geometry ribbon horizontal modify called start station. Start station. I'm going to locate the element by left clicking on it, and I'm going to start responding to the heads up prompt. My start distance here, I want to make sure it's set to 0. I can either lock it to 0 or just accept it with a left click when it says the start distance is 0. And when it prompts me for the start station, I'm going to type that in on the keyboard, and I believe it was 819 plus 60.020. And I'm going to hit enter. That actually left clicks the enter, does the left click, and it cycles through the command. And you can see in the lower left corner, I'm back to locate element. Well, I'm done. Let's just verify that it's got the correct station. If I select this, I can see manipulators show up. I see some that say 0, but I'm going to hover over the one that says 819 plus 60. And when I hover over it, I see that it says that is the starting station. Awesome. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to set the starting station. And I don't need that information anymore, but I'll leave it. All right, checking in with my process. And I've got to the point where it says, change my view. We're ready to start dealing with the profile. So I need to display a profile window, and I'm going to right press in my view, right press, choose view control, choose two views, plan/profile, and then respond to the prompts. Yes, it's okay to create a dynamic profile view of, I need to locate that element. So I'm left clicking on it in plan, and then I need to select that profile view, and it displays for me the terrain. Yay! That's hunky-dory. Here's what you need to check. Check the stationing along the bottom. If the stationing along the bottom starts at 0, you need to go back and you need to set that starting station on the 0 offset alignment. So my stationing looks rock solid, so I can go to the next step. The next step is to right-click on that active terrain line and set it as the active profile. What we're doing is we're creating a vertical, an active vertical, for our offset horizontal alignment, or 0 offset. So in the profile window, I'm going to right press hard, and I get that pop-up, and number 5 from the top is set as active profile. So I'll choose that, and it does that. And I can actually deselect, I can clear the selection set, I don't need it anymore. So I've got that active profile set. It says I need to save the settings to preserve my multi-model views, and then I'm going to project my run. Saving the settings is up in the quick access tools. It's a little diskette icon. Control F, click that setting to save the settings. Now I need to run a command that's on the drainage and utilities ribbon workflow. So I'm going to change to drainage and utilities, which is at the bottom. And that command is on the layout tab in the profile runs group. And it would be smart if I have the plan view active, and it would be smart if I could see my profile run. See, I've got some pipes and stuff, so I thought, oh, well, maybe that's my profile run. So I'm going to check, I'm going to use this project run command. Project run. Now, my tool settings changes, and again, there's an offset, it's a vertical offset. I'm going to go ahead and check the box and set that to 0. I do not want to vertically offset this at all. I'm going to choose a feature definition though. Choose this, and it's out of the linear group, and this is where I've discovered I need to update the PDF again. This folder is not just called drainage. The folder that the feature definitions for the profile runs live in, it's called drainage and utilities. So I'll update that. And, sorry, just had to mute everybody again. So I'll do that one more time. Linear, drainage and utilities, and choose profile run. This automatically names it, which is absolutely fine. And I'm prompted to select the profile run. So I need to select that from the referenced information. So I'm going to hover over the one that's parallel to the alignment, this blue stuff, and everything says not valid for tool. So remember when I made a decision about which DU file to attach? I think I made a mistake. Later and bigger is evidently not better. This file doesn't have any profile runs in it. I'm going to choose the element selection tool, and with the default model active, I'm going to go to the references dialog, and I am going to, let's just toggle that one off. I'll leave it attached, but let's make a new reference attachment to, let's go to the hydraulics folder and choose number 2. Let's choose number 2. And no nesting is fine. Oh, that's interesting. I get stuff in a totally different area. Oh, okay. Well, there is, maybe that's what I wanted. This is not my data, you guys. Let's try this data, okay? Because I do see a pipe here, but there's different graphics, the white stuff over here. So when I choose to project a run, vertical offset set to 0, everything's all set up, and I hover over this pipe that goes between like a manhole there and an inlet. It doesn't tell me I can't do it, so I'm going to choose it. Left click, and then it says I need to select the plan element that I want to project onto. There's no assumptions about what profile to use because you could have multiple alignments. So I need to select this 0 offset alignment. So when I hover over it, it says L_0 offset. I left click on that, and it has cycled around, and I could project another run. I don't see another run, I just see the one. So I'm going to choose Element Selection Tool to get out of the command, go down to my profile window, and I'm going to zoom out. And I see that that run got projected in right there. Now I make a comment in here, and here's where I need to update step number 13, and I'll say drainage and utilities. That I make a comment someplace that it's best if the hydraulics engineer annotates, and that's number 17. It's best if the hydraulics engineer annotates the profile run in the drainage database. That's best if they just annotate that in their profile run. Then it will be displayed here. I'm not going to try annotation. So I'm going to go straight to step number 14, though, to placing a named boundary. And there's indications here that if the named boundaries will not place, you probably skipped a step. I did this, that's how I discovered it, and that was step number 11, which was setting an active profile. So let's go ahead and place our named boundaries. I'm going to make sure that the default model, the 2D model, is the active model. That's typically where named boundaries get saved, but I'm going to choose Drawing Production, Named Boundary Tool. I'm going to choose the Civil Profile. Going to select a drawing seed, and I'm going to choose profile inch. Oh, let's try 20. I'm not sure. Absolutely not sure. Now, when I move my mouse, and I need to make sure that it says station limits. So I get to set the station limits. I could set a starting station, but if I move my mouse off, I'm prompted in the lower left corner. That's why I move my mouse off of the dialog. The lower left corner says, hey, you got to identify the profile view. To do that, I'm just going to left click on the title bar of the profile view. That's the one. And I notice that my prompts now say new node, and that's annoying to me. So I just wanted to give you a little heads up about why that is. And typically I will start this with the profile active. Let's see, and I had a question that I'm not going to be able to address. How does projecting work with crossings? Not sure I can address that. And another comment is you need to project the roadway alignment profile onto the 0 offset alignment. You can, it is not necessary. What I've been told is that in drainage profiles, the design vertical geometry is not required to be displayed. So that's why I did not copy the vertical from that, because that's a command that you could use. So we can always investigate that later if you think that you need to do that and if you want that shown. But it's not required by what I know is required in the plan or the profile for the contract plans. So just that ground line is what's required. Okay, I wanted to just get back to this prompt that says new node. That just bothers the heck out of me. So I'm going to use the element selection tool just to start this command again. And when I start the command with the profile window being the active window, knowing that I'm going to create a civil profile, then my prompts will continue. So I'm going to start the command. And you could set it or not, inch 20, station limits, move my mouse, and it says identify the profile view. So I left click. It still wants me to identify. Oh, now it really identifying it with the title bar click was not enough. It wants a left click in the view window, in the black area. So I'm going to left click in the view window. Now it wants me to accept a starting point. So I want to start somewhere to the left of this alignment. And it's asking about stationing. So I'm going to start just to the left. And then I'm going to move to the right. And you can see how I can add additional sheets. But I'm just going to choose the one. Left click when I get one drawn and accept it with another left click. So I've got my sheet, my name boundary for my sheet created. The drawing is not created at this point. You'll notice I still just have the two models. I don't have any other models. So my next step in the process is to simply create the drawings. And by the way, if I have vertical geometry displayed in here, when I create those drawings, the vertical geometry will automatically be annotated, which you then have to remove since the vertical geometry shouldn't be in the drainage profile. So that's why it's not displayed here. I'm going to right click on that named boundary, and you'll notice up near the top of this right press menu is create drawing. I'm going to choose that create drawing, and I'm going to verify that my scales are all what I want them to be. Because of the way I drew that boundary might have been drawn a little bit smaller than the sheet. When that happens, sometimes your detail scale at the bottom will be an assumed scale that's a little bit different than what I wanted. I wanted inch 20. That's the annotation scale I want. That was the drawing boundary seed that I chose. But I just verify that my detail scale is also inch 20, and then I can click OK. So now I've got my sheet created. It's displaying the profile run that it sees from the data. If I want to change to the drawing model, where you could add annotation here, you could use your civil labeler, add annotation. You could add annotation from any of your ribbon, your ODOT ribbon workflows, dumb annotation, however you want. That will be displayed here in this drawing model and will also be displayed in the sheet. Many people do not use the sheets from the OPNP. What they tend to use is the drawing model. So they would create separately a profile file, and we can actually do this. Let's just exit this. Actually, I'm just going to use my new command because I can. And I'm going to create a brand new high K59s EF01.dgn. So it's a profile file. And if I actually wanted to create the sheet, I could attach the drawing to a sheet model in this file. So I could create a sheet model in this file if I wanted to. That's just one way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new model sheet from seed, but I'm going to choose which seed I want to use. I want to use the 11 by 17 with boundary, border, and guidelines. And this is going to be my drainage profile. And if I want to put a sheet number in there, I can. I can't remember, so I'm just going to leave it set to 000. So here's a sheet, and it's got the space, and it leaves the space for the boundary. So then we can attach a reference to the OPNP file. I'm going to choose interactive, which allows me to select which model. I'm going to choose the drawing type model. profile 1. I want to choose the detail scale of inch 20 because that is the scale that I created that drawing model at. And I need to use live nesting, just depth of 1, just enough to get back to the default model is all that's required. And I click OK. We don't see it because this is a manual attachment and it's coincident world behind the scenes. But if I zoom out, I will see there's the sheet over on the right. So now I can use my commands to move the reference, and I can move it into the sheet, and there I've got my plan sheet. All right. Any questions or other comments?
Lenny, this is Dave McDonald, Region 1. From
Hi.
I guess that last scenario that you were laying out was, creating the sheet from the profile. Generally, Region 1 cuts drainage profiles along the pipe so you can see the true length versus a projected length.
Yeah. I've seen that as well. And sometimes you'll have pipes that aren't necessarily parallel to a profile, or they're not within the roadway prism. So then I've seen the same thing. What folks will do is they will create like a hydraulics geometry that just runs down the center of the pipe. Yeah.
That's generally what we do. And then same with like a crossing pipe, we'll just create a hydraulic alignment that crosses and use that from a standpoint.
Exactly. I've seen that done. It's very easy. Yeah, and you can do all of that in your geometry file. If you own that geometry file, you can do all of that in that geometry file. You don't have to, you can project the run right into the profile of that hydraulic alignment. Yeah.
And I guess in general, we've been completing that in our working document because if we have to do any edits, you then have to chase it back through the OPNP file.
Right. You don't necessarily need to use the OPNP file. And in previous versions, the drainage database was not accessible via a reference. Now, what that means is that when we first rolled out and we were using version 10.08 and version 10.10, we couldn't attach the drainage database as a reference to a geometry and project a profile run. We couldn't see the database at all. It's just different kind of data. Now we can. So now we can take advantage of the OPNP file. So we don't have to do all of that stuff in the DU file. That was our workaround, was, okay, I need to create my sheet in the drainage and utilities working file. That's a really poor place to create a sheet because it's not in the number 2 plan sheets folder. So it makes it, it's just difficult with the file management. So now that we have software that doesn't force us into using that workaround, now we need to leverage the process that was established years ago now, because now drainage and utilities will allow the data to be federated into other files, and it can be attached by a reference. This allows hydraulic engineers to retain their working copy and make changes to their working copy, and those changes will be reflected in sheets that are created that attach that as a reference without any other thing happening. You won't have to recreate the profile runs. You won't have to recreate the sheets. That can all be done by a CAD technician, because it's it's accessing the reference dynamically now with this version. Now, what is also happening is a lot of us no longer have CAD technicians, but so you're doing your own plan creation. And that's the file management, I think, is another topic that needs to be discussed by the different disciplines about, okay, if we don't have to keep things in a separate area for CAD technicians, what would be a good way to manage our files so that we always know where things are, and so that there's one source of truth, and so that things are dynamically updated as we move along. This new functionality, the ability to see via a reference what's going on in the drainage file, though it also allows other disciplines to use the hydraulic data without making a copy, which is a copy in time of that drainage database, that DU file. They don't have to copy it anymore. We used to have to work around by copying that. Now they can attach a reference to your drainage database, and they can do their own design. Maybe it's geologic design that they need to do. Maybe it's roadway designer needs to attach your drainage database. You have a separate roadway designer. If you make changes to your drainage, it will automatically be seen in the roadway file because of that dynamic reference. So that's the nice thing about these versions. 2023 and 2024 have the ability to see inside the DU file when it's attached as a reference. So that's where I think the hydraulic engineers want to get back to. Quit having people making copies of their data that's static, that they have to keep updating. Yeah.
Does the 3D information come in? So would the roadway designer be able to 3D, I guess, view our pipes?
Yeah. Yes, because when they make a reference attachment in an ORD file, when they make a reference attachment to your DU file, that reference attachment to the 3D model, that's the ORD manage reference attachment, that will happen automatically, and it will display the 3D information. Yes, that is true. I had an example in this data set where the corridor was displaying all of the DU graphics because the DU file was attached as a reference. Yeah. There's another comment. If there's a proposed terrain file, that surface can be displayed as well in the profile, which is very true. I did not have a proposed. Step number 5 says to attach your finished grade terrain-based container file. Yeah, anything that's attached can be displayed. Sometimes you have to project it into that profile. If it's not the active, you'd probably have to project it in. But yes, you can display the different terrains. Absolutely.
Can you touch on the annotation location again?
My recommendation for the annotation is that if you're annotating drainage information, I believe it's best if that annotation is performed by the hydraulic designer in the DU file. Some annotation can be performed via a reference, but it's not rock solid. So it's best if the hydraulic engineer annotates their civil data. I do believe that there is a video that was produced by Region 1 Hydraulics, and Delaney helped with the production of that. It was kind of a training video. It was over a year ago, but it's posted on the East website, and it shows how to do some of the annotation that was available a year ago. We also do have, there's a drainage folder in the civil labeler. I've had better luck with the civil labeler when the active file is the drainage file. The civil labeler seems to have more trouble accessing that data via a reference. So that's why I made that comment in number 17 about the annotation should be in the DU file. Thanks for coming today.